section, we're having a very special section by title Automating Navigation in Excel by Neale Blackwood. So let us give a brief description about our company, UrBizEdge. UrBizEdge is a registered Microsoft Excel consulting, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. We specialize in helping companies and high-value professionals be on top of their business data. So let us give some information about our upcoming training. So our next upcoming training, which is financial modeling and financial planning training, is coming up on the 1st to on the 4th of November. Also, the next training, which is in-depth Excel training, executive dashboard and business intelligence, which is coming up on the 12th to 13th of November. And also we have big data analysis, Power Query, Power Pivot, and VBA in Excel, which is coming up on the 12th to 13th of November. That's next month. So I'll give a brief description about our special guest by name Neale Blackwood. So Neale Blackwood has written over 200 Excel articles for the CPA Australia magazine since 2002. He has presented numerous Excel training sections around Australia for CPA Australia and has released over 30 Excel podcasts with them. He has started his book Advanced Excel Reporting for Management Accounting was published by Wilson in 2004. He has started an online Excel training platform in February 2020 and has over 30 hours of free Excel training content on his website, which is excelyourself.com.au. So for this special section, it's going to be recorded due to the fact that our special guest is on a different location, which there's a very big difference in time zone. So with no further ado, I'll hand over the section to Michael. So Michael will play the recorded section.
Welcome from sunny Perth, Western Australia. We're on the African side of Australia, so a bit closer than the eastern states. But welcome. And this is the first time I've done this type of session for an Excel community, so this is the first time for everything. Unfortunately, with the time difference, it's a bit late in Perth when you run yours live, so hopefully this session will be useful for you. We are going to go and look at how we can create a contents sheet and create hyperlinks. Now, obviously hyperlinks can be used for other things apart from a content sheet, but that's what we're going to base it on. Now, I am happy to take questions after the session, so if you want to email me at a4@iinet, then I'm happy to sort of do a follow-up video answering any questions that you may have raised. If you want to check out my websites, A4 Accounting is a blogging website which I've had since 2012. Excel Yourself is my new online training platform for Excel, and it started last year just before COVID hit, so you can check out both sites. They've both got a lot of free content on Excel. If you want to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, they're my handles on the screen as well. Okay, let's dive in. So this is a worksheet session where we're going to look at different ways to create index sheets. One thing you realize about Excel, there's lots of different ways to do the same thing. Now, in large files, an index sheet or a content sheet is pretty much mandatory because you'll end up with lots of different sheets. It's pretty much best practice in Excel to split up your files into things like reports, data, instructions, dashboards, and have separate sheets for each of those things. And you might have multiple sheets for some things. So having an index sheet can make it easier to navigate around. Of course, there are a few shortcuts that can save you time as well. So for example, if you right-click the arrow symbols here, you actually, there we get it. If we right-click here, you can get a list of all of the sheets in there anyway. So that sort of gets around the need for an index sheet to some extent, but we'll go through and show you how you can create it, because as I mentioned, you can use hyperlinks for other things apart from an index sheet. Okay. So the last example here will be a fully automated one. It does require the latest version of Excel, so in Office 365, and which is the subscription version, and also it requires, it's going to use an old macro. So this is a macro before VBA. So it's interesting that it's still supported. So it'd be interesting to see how long VBA lasts as well, given that they're looking at other scripting languages. So you will need to enable macros for the macro solutions to work. We've also got a standalone macro solution. So this one here, if we click on this one, it'll actually ask you a question. So this one here will create a list of sheets for you with hyperlinks, but it will clear your undo list. So that's what this little message is saying. So if you click no, it won't do anything, which is okay, but you can copy this sheet to another file and it will work the same way. It will automatically create a list of all of the sheets, and it's a hyperlinked list. In this sheet, we're going to create one that's automated with that old-fashioned macro that I mentioned. Now, the session is going to use a number of different techniques, and you can apply these techniques to things like documentation and instructions, as well as contents. So hopefully you'll learn a few techniques to create some better spreadsheets. So let's dive in. Before we do dive in, I wanted to cover a couple of formulas. So in the manual, also in the manual, page 2. Now, these used to be called hyperlinks, but in the recent version, so if you right-click a cell, it now says link here, down the bottom here. That used to say hyperlink. So I don't like the new terminology, because to me, a link in Excel is a cell link, so that, like a formula link. But that's another terminology that they've changed. So that's the hyperlink option. Control K is the shortcut, which opens up the hyperlink box, which is here. Pretty much this is if you're creating a manual hyperlink, which we will do later on, but let's just work with some other formulas first. So I use the sheet name a lot in my models that I build. One reason is that sheet names have to be unique. You can't have a duplicated sheet name. And so they're good to use for things like departments or branches or something else like that, that you need to be unique, even codes and things like that. And the beauty of it is you can create a formula to extract out the sheet name. And that's what this formula does. It uses a helper cell. Now, helper cells are other cells that you create to basically make your last formula shorter. You can create this formula by itself as a standalone formula, and that's what it looks like. So you can see it up here in the formula bar. It's quite long. Now, I'm going to show you a technique, if you do have the latest version of Excel, how you can shorten this one. But what we do is we have the cell function. Now, you may notice that this function refers to its same cell. It's referring to A1. The cell function is an information function, so it doesn't actually do any calculations. It only displays, in this case, the folder. So this is the folder that I'm using, as well as the sheet name, the file name, and on the end is the sheet name. And so that's what file name returns. Always use a reference here. You don't have to, it is optional, but if you don't use it, it can give you incorrect results. So always put a reference on the end for that one. And then this one takes whatever's in A1, it goes right, it finds out how long A1 is, it basically finds the search for that last square bracket, and the difference is how many characters are in the sheet name. So that gives you, in this case, data 1 or data space 1. Now, as I mentioned, this formula here does the same thing. So this, instead of using a helper cell, it's actually using the cell function. This is actually a really good example of how you can use the brand new let function. So let's see how we can do that. So here's a good shortcut. I want to copy the formula from above. And so to do it without changing the cell reference, what you can do is hold the control key and hit it's the apostrophe. So it's the key on the left-hand side of the enter key. There we go. So that copies the formula identically, so it doesn't change anything in the formula. So let's see how we can tweak this one. So what we're going to do is use the let function. And the let function allows you to use variables. Now I'm just going to use the variable x, comma, and then you tell it what x equals. Now this is the cell function that is repeated what's in there 1, 2, 3 times. So I'm going to copy that and put it here. By the way, you can copy within formulas. So that captures the result of the cell function in the variable x. And so wherever you've used that cell function, you can replace that with x. So let me do that. And one more. And there we go. So you can see it shortens the formula a lot. So basically it captures that string. So this string is in A1. It captures that in the variable x because that's the file name. You then refer to it in the right. You find out how long it is. You find out where the square bracket is. And that does the same thing. Oh, what have we missed? We've missed the last bracket on the let. And there we go. So that gives you the same result. This formula can be copied anywhere in the file and it will return whatever the sheet name is for that particular one. So that's a useful formula to know about. Okay, so that was on page 3 of the notes in the manual. Okay, let's look at how we can use the hyperlink function. So the hyperlink function can automate the ability to create a hyperlink and make it flexible. So we'll see some examples of that in a minute. So with this example, let's just switch this to the equal sign. I'll get rid of that and do that, copy that down. So I'll do this again. I'll just get rid of this. We'll zoom in a bit. Oh, by the way, if you are not familiar, this is grouping. So I'm going to use the left-hand side here as helper cells, and I'm going to hide them using this minus. To do that, I'll get rid of it first. There we go. To add the grouping, the keyboard shortcut is Shift, Alt, and the right arrow. And that will insert the grouping. And to take it out, it's Shift, Alt, and the left arrow. And I'll put it back. Now that's a really good way, and it's the recommended way to hide columns and rows. It works for rows as well. So what I want to do is I have these names in all of these sheets. A2 has the name of the sheet. So I've added that formula in all of these sheets. These are all blank, by the way. These are just placeholder sheets, just sort of demonstrating how you have multiple sheets in a file. And so A2 is always, so I've been consistent, A2 always has the sheet name in it. So I can link to that cell. So if I want to link to the data 1 cell there, and so I can create a formula, I can copy that down, and let's say I should have fixed the reference to A2. Let's do that again, copy down.
You just mute.
Hello, Michael.
Yeah, the audio, right?
Yeah, Giorgio. Sorry, everyone. This is actually a recorded section, so let's just see how it goes. So everyone, if you can check your chat box, you see that there are some links to all the files he's using today. So you can download it, the Excel file, the PDF file, and every other file.
This is pretty much what you need to create. So this formula is pretty much the exact formula you need to get to the hyperlink. And so what we can do is we can use one of Excel's other new functions, or reasonably new, called FORMULATEXT. So FORMULATEXT is it returns, if I just do it here, now this is not the final formula, but I'll show you what it looks like. So FORMULATEXT referring to another cell gives you the formula. So it's actually really handy for things like training and documentation. But what we're going to use it for is we're going to convert that cell reference, which has the equal sign into it, to a basically a bookmark reference. So the hash symbol in Excel now has two uses. You can use the hash symbol to refer to a bookmark, which is what a hyperlink will go to, or you can use it for the brand new dynamic arrays. So we're actually going to use one of our formulas. We're going to use it for both reasons. So that will be towards the end of the session. So here we go. So I'm going to convert. So I'm going to use the substitute function. And
Sadiq, I see your hand is up. Any particular concern? Okay, maybe it was a mistake. So please don't forget that he's giving us all the materials ahead too. So download them from the links we've shared. And if you have any question, he's giving us his contact, which we'll put in the chat box. He says he's going to do another video to answer your questions and send back, if need be. Because of time zone difference is why he cannot join us. This is like 3 a.m. zone time.
And I'm going to substitute the equal sign with the, get the double quotes, with the hash symbol. So that's above the number 3 on the keyboard. Okay, so that's going to convert the formula to a bookmark, which looks like that. So if we copy it down, and that is going to enable us to really simply create a hyperlink, because normally you sort of build the reference up within the hyperlink function, but we're using FORMULATEXT here. And again, these have formulas in them, so that's why we can use those, because these have links to where we want to link to, basically. So here we go. Here's the hyperlink function, equals hyperlink, and we can just refer to cell A7, comma, and now within quotes, you can actually put whatever you want. Now I'm just going to use the word link there, and we can copy that down. Cool. So let's use the data 3 one. So I'm going to click on this cell, and that should take us to the data 3 sheet. And it does. So there we go. Now, little shortcut to go backwards, or to go back to where you were. You press these keys in sequence. You press the F5 key, so the F5 function key. So if you're on a laptop, you might need to press an extra key as well to get to the function keys. And then you just press enter. So F5, you press F5, and then you press enter. And that takes you back to where you were when you followed the hyperlink. And so all of these work pretty well. So there's the data 1 and data 2. So the beauty of this is you can just create a link to the formulas, because creating links is really easy, but creating hyperlinks and editing hyperlinks is not that easy. Editing formulas is really easy. So that's why I recommend you using this sort of technique to build up you're basically building this reference, which is a really easy reference to use with the hyperlink function. Usually you've got to use like text to build this up, and that can be time consuming, whereas just using the substitute with the formula text makes that really easy. Okay, so that's the first use of the hyperlink. Let's see how we can make it a little bit more flexible. Okay, so this time we want to create a dynamic cell reference. So we want the ability to change these cells to be the cell that you want to link to. So what we can do is let's put some different cell references in here. Okay, so they're the cell references we want to link to. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically use the hash symbol again. So equals. We're going to build this up from scratch. Hash. Now we are going to put this the apostrophe. You may notice. I'll just show you this. I'll go back and do that. You may notice that there is an apostrophe in front of the data in each of these because the sheet has a space in it. If you don't have a space in it, you don't need the apostrophe, but because you don't know if the sheet could have a space in it, you always put the apostrophe in. So here we go, equals, and hit the apostrophe and the double quotes. So that has the apostrophe and the quotes in there. I might make this formula a little bit bigger once we've finished it so you can see that. So ampersand to join text together. I don't use the concatenate function. I just use the ampersand symbol to join text together. And so the text, that's the sheet name I need to create, is there. That's actually data 1. And then ampersand again, and double quotes, single quote, and then the exclamation mark, which is the sheet reference. So that's pretty much all we need for that. Let's have a look at that. That looks pretty good. Copy that down. So there we go. So that's the prefix, if you like, that we need to put in front of this cell reference. And so we can go into here and use that hyperlink function again and just combine that with that to create, and then we'll just again just use the word link at the end. So copy that down, double click to copy down to. If you double click the fill handle, that's the easy way to copy down. Let's try it. So this one should take us to cell D300 in the data 3 sheet. Drum roll. There we go, D300. By the way, you can also, F5 enter, you can also refer to ranges here. So let's say we wanted to select D1 to D300. So we wanted to select a range. You can use that as well. So click on the link and that will select all of that range. So D3, quick way to go around a range, by the way. Hold the control key and press the full stop. And that takes you around the range. This one's pretty easy because it's just a one column, but control and the full stop will actually take you to the extremities of whatever range you've got selected. So that one's not in the notes, so that might be useful to make a note of. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So yes, you can actually select ranges as well. So that can be good for things like procedures that you might be building in your models. It makes it easier to select the range, have it already selected rather than manually selecting it each time. Okay, so that's the hyperlink function and a couple of different ways to use it. Normally, creating this first argument is the complex bit. But using that formula text trick and replacing the equal sign with the hash symbol just makes creating the link a lot easier. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to create a range name and link to the range name, and use the hyperlink to create the range name. Now, if you create a manual hyperlink and change the sheet name, the manual hyperlink will break. But when you use a range name to do it, it's a little bit more robust. There's still some issues, and I'll show you how to create the, I think I've got in here how to create the unbreakable, the old unbreakable, hyperlink. So let's see how we do it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to name this cell. So at the moment, this is in data 1. I'm going to click in the name box. So this is range names. This is just a little brief intro into range names. You can you can name cells, you can name ranges. And I use range names all the time. Range names do split the Excel community a little bit, usually down the middle. A lot of people don't like range names and won't use them, because they reckon it makes the files more complex. I'm on the side that says that yes, they do increase the complexity, but they can also increase the flexibility and make it more structured if you use the right range names. This one is just a simple idea of using a hyperlink, a hyperlink to a range name. So I'm going to name cell A2 HL data 1. Now, a couple of rules: you can't use you can't have a space in a range name. You can't start a range name with a number. So I've used HL as a prefix there. By using prefixes and suffixes, you can sort of find things a little easier, because when you list range names, they are listed in alphabetical order. So if you use something like HL or even just H as a prefix, then that can be for your hyperlinks. You must press enter. Okay, so that's created. I'll create another one here for HL in this cell, HL data 2, and one more for data 3 here. Oh, right here. Control home always gets you home to the top left of your sheet. HL data 3. Whoop. There we go. So they're 3 separate range names. So I'm going to create some manual hyperlinks here. So Control K opens up that. You want to place in this document. Now, they're called defined names by Excel. Pretty much everyone calls them range names. They are, in fact, named formulas. That's the technical term, but Excel calls them defined names. So I'm going to go H3, do that. And then I can just copy that down and change. Actually, that doesn't necessarily work. So let's create another one here. The text that's displayed in there isn't really what's there. This is just doing, the text is pretty much just text. Doesn't really do much. So HL3 and one more, Control K. Okay, so these are the typical hyperlink that you may see. They're the manual ones that you've put in. These, when you use a range name, they handle changes to the sheet name. So that gets around the sheet name issue. So that's one recommendation. Now, if you delete the cell that the range name is linked to, then that will delete and if I do that, so let's go to data 3 here, and let's delete that row, which is going to cause a few issues in other sheets as well. We're going to undo this in a minute. But if we go back to here and try the 3, you'll see that the reference isn't valid. That's because I've deleted the reference. So let's undo that. Okay, let's put it back. So what we can do, and I'm going to do this the first one, so this particular one, I'm going to convert this into an unbreakable hyperlink. So no matter what you do, this link will always work. So let's go into the name manager. So under formulas, name manager, and I'll do it to this first one. I'm going to change this formula. So this is the reference at the moment. So I'm going to go in there and just type equals index, open bracket, and click on the little icon that's on the left-hand side of the A, and you're selecting the whole sheet. And then I'm going to go comma 2, which is the second row, comma 1, which is the first column. So you're creating an index and it's keyed in so it doesn't change to the first column and the second row, which is A2 basically. You could use 1-1 if you want as well. That will take you to A1. And that's it, close. So that, do I want to change? Yes. That is unbreakable. So let's go back here. So let's try this HL1. So it's still working, which is good. So let's delete that cell now. Okay, so let's try it again. There we go. So it's still working even though I deleted the cell. So I'll undo that. So that's the unbreakable hyperlink, which is on page, where are we? 8 of the notes. So now the sequence is important here. You do need to create the manual hyperlink first. And the reason is this. If we try and create a hyperlink again, Control K, the data 1 is no longer listed. Okay, so you have to create the manual hyperlink and then use that in, well, basically create the manual hyperlink to just a normal named cell. Then change the range name, which is what we did, to the index version. So because once you create the index version, you can no longer refer to it here in the defined names because it's not listed. So you do need to make sure that you use that sequence. So create the normal cell-based range name, create the hyperlink to that cell, then change the range name to the index version, and then it will all work okay and it's unbreakable. So the sequence is important. So just be aware of that. Okay. Oh, it's on page 8 and 9 of the notes. Okay, let's have a look at this one now. This is the macro version. So as I mentioned earlier, macros, unfortunately, one of the downsides of macros in Excel is that they clear the undo list, which can be a bit frustrating for users. So what you can do is, in this case, this one will actually ask the user if they want to update the hyperlinks because it will clear the undo list. So it gives them the option not to run the macro. So you can click no. This macro runs whenever you select the sheet. So that's it's called an event macro, and it runs automatically. So I'm going to click it again. This time I'm going to click yes. Now, these are all normal hyperlinks. So these are hyperlinks to specific cells in a specific sheet. So these are all breakable if the sheet name changes. But because this is automatically updated every time you select the sheet, it sort of gets around the problem because you can just go outside the sheet and come back in, and it will update. Now, it will only ask you to change if there was a change needed. So let's go and have a look at that. So we'll click outside and click back. So notice that the macro didn't run, or the dialog didn't pop up. I'm going to change data here to data 300. Let's say we got a lot of data. Okay, so that's a name change. So that's going to break that manual hyperlink that the macro created. So when I go back to index 5, it actually knows that. And it says, okay, do you want to update it this time? So I'll say yes. So there's data 3 at the moment. Click yes. And now it's data 300 and it works okay. So just that macro, and we'll go have a look at it now. So let's go have a look at the macro. The macro is actually in this sheet. Normally you don't put macros in the sheet itself, but this sheet you can copy to other files and use it as an index. So that's why I did it. So let's have a look at it. You can right click and view code. I'll drag this over. There we go. So that's the code. It's fairly long. I'm not going to go through all of the code. It's basically checking. We'll go through the steps. I use variables a lot in my code. I also use option explicit, which means you've got to declare your variables. And so basically, when this worksheet is activated, the update hyperlinks macro is run, which is here. And it basically it uses the range A4, so that's its start range. If we go back to the sheet there, you'll see A4 is that's where the sheet list will begin. It figures out if the names have changed. So it goes through the listing and it sees if it uses a count if to figure out if there's any changes. So you can use a function within a macro. So you just use the worksheet function dot, in this case, count if, and it's using the current range on A4 to figure that out. If it is different, so it's going to basically return, this is a Boolean. Boolean holds true or false, and it's going to change to true. And then basically I go down here, if the update is required, so if it equals false, then what's that saying? If then, get this right, if that equals true, exit that, there's an exit the for. Okay, yeah. B update's true, so if B update equals false, yeah, so that means that it didn't find it. So if it does equal 0, then B update. Basically, we go through and we don't identify any deleted sheets there, and it goes through and checks on that. Then it says if an update's required, it's going to go to handle exit. If it's not, else then it asks you whether you want to change it. So that's why that's where the message box comes in. And then if it is, it goes and clears the contents, and then it goes. This is the bit that creates the hyperlink list. Everything else was sort of working up to this. So, we're asking the question, etc. So feel free to go through and look at the macro. One of the things, this is written in VBA, so Visual Basic for Applications. It is fairly readable. That's one of the advantages of it. On error resume next is sort of a last resort command that you use. When you do use it, you should return it to on error go to 0, because on error resume next just keeps going. And in this case, that's sort of what it does when it's going through and identifying any deleted sheets that might be in the list. Okay. So it basically selects the start cell. It sets R to 0 because R is used as an incrementer. So that's the R equals R plus 1. If you're new to programming, then this may look a bit unusual, but basically it just increments and it just increases the row. Down the bottom here, I set all my object variables to nothing, which is sort of best practice in terms of programming. I do have a little basic error handler in there. It's not doing anything radical. It basically just displays an error if something happens. That may happen if the sheet is protected, for example. Okay, so that's the macro. This macro is in the where are we? Index 5 sheet here. So it's in the index 5 sheet. I've also got a separate macro that creates hyperlinks here as well, so you can have a play with those. This is in the mod index module on the left-hand side. If you can't see this, that's called the Project Explorer window. So if I turn it off, sorry, I just turned it on. So yeah, that's Project Explorer window. That's Control R. So if you close it, Project Explorer, that displays it. Okay, so that is so these are more macros that you just run, and it will insert the list at A4 in this case. This one here does it from whatever cell you're in. So there's a couple of different versions of the macro there. That's in the mod index sheet, as opposed to the ones that are built into the index 5 sheet, which this sheet you can copy to other files to create this automated version. Okay, so that's the VBA macro version. This one here is going to use an old macro command. So this is pre-VBA in terms of Excel macros. There were macros before VBA. I think the VBA came in about in the mid 90s. I think VBA started in Excel. So prior to that, there was a macro language as well that was a bit more function based. Now, I've got to do a hat tip for Bob Umlas, who's an Excel MVP, and he shared a technique that I tweaked a little bit. So, and he retweaked it as well and showed me another shortcut. So we had a bit of to and froing here, and we ended up with this little technique, which I'm going to share with you. So we're going to use a couple of different range names to create a dynamic hyperlink list. So let's see how we can do it. So we're on page 11 of the notes, and we're going to use some range names. So let's make a start. So we're going to go name manager, and I'm just going to go new. And the first name we're going to create is called sheet listing. Now, I recommend using at least one capital letter in your names. There are advantages with doing that. Much like functions, when Excel's using a range name in a formula, for example, if it doesn't recognize the name, it won't capitalize it. So, for example, if you did a typo, then it's an easy way to pick up typos because all of your names will still be in lowercase. So always have at least one uppercase character in your range names. So sheet listing. Now here's the formula. Let's get rid of that. Go equals. So it's towards the bottom of page 14. It's transpose. Unfortunately, you don't get much help with formulas in this entry. You can make it wider though. So transpose get dot workbook open bracket. Now normally you have the number 1 here. Okay, so it looks like that. Now the problem I faced, and this is what Bob came back to me with, is that I needed to make this more dynamic because some things don't trigger a recalculation in Excel. And so I created a list using this 1, and it didn't update automatically. So he gave me a little hack and just go plus now, or plus 0 times now, open bracket, close bracket. The now function, you should know probably that the now function returns the current date and time. And the thing that it does is it is volatile, which means it pretty much calculates every time Excel calculates. And by doing that, this then will automate this list a little bit more. It was reasonably automated before, but this makes it more automated. So let's hit enter. Okay, so there it is, sheet listing. That's a good start. So now we're going to add, so that, oh, by the way, I'll just edit that. This get workbook open bracket 1 is the old-fashioned macro. That's it's sort of function based in the old version of Excel, and that's sort of still supported at the moment, so that's good. Okay, so that gives us a listing of all of the sheets in the workbook, but the names that it does, so let's have a look what it returns. So if I type it in, equals sheet listing, notice how it's got the square brackets for the name, and all of the sheet names we want are all on the end. So it's similar to the problem we had with that cell function. We need to extract from the end of that listing. So what I'm going to do is create another name that does that. So let's do it. Create a new name. This one's going to be called sheet only listing. Okay, so we can go equals right, open bracket, and sheet listing. Spell it right, comma. Then we're going to use the len function on sheet listing. minus, I'll use find. Find, you can use find and search. They're sort of, they work together. I'll use the, one's case sensitive, the other isn't. Oh, come on. There we go. And again, that's sheet listing. Apologies, I'm not the best typist in the world. Close the bracket, and I think that should work. Click OK. No, I've missed something there. Okay, so edit. Let's have a look. So right, open bracket, sheet listing, comma, length of sheet listing minus find sheet listing. That looks okay. Maybe that's all wrong. Let's try that again. It's always hard to see that. So double quotes, square brackets, double quotes. Let's try that. That's better. So I might have had a single quotation mark in there. Now we can replace this one with sheet only listing. Well, actually, we can do it over here. Sheet only listing just lists the sheet name, and see how it automatically fills down. So this is part of dynamic arrays. So as you can see, that gives us a list of all of the sheets that are there. Now, of course, we can sort that listing. So equals sort A4 and the hash symbol. So the hash symbol, when you use it on the end of a reference, links to, as you can see, it colors in that spilled range. So it's called spilling. It spills down. So now we can sort it. And having sorted it, we can create a hyperlink. Now, this version is the more complex version of the hyperlink. This is where we're building it on the fly, if you like. So this is the very bottom of page 12 in the notes. So here we go, equals hyperlink, double quotes, and then the hash, and then the single apostrophe, then the double quotes, and then the ampersand, and then we're going to link to the name, ampersand, single quote, and then we got the hash, the exclamation, and then we'll put, I'll just put A1. Have I put A1? Yep, A1. There we go, comma, and I'll just use the link again. Okay, drum roll. That looks good. Oh, I didn't use B4 hash. Look at that. That's automated. So we've got that one's the sheet only listing. This one refers to it and sorts to it, and this one builds the hyperlink. Now this is, as I mentioned, this is sort of a complicated way to build the hyperlink. I showed you an easier way to do it, but this one does it too, and it's using, this is the first time I've seen the hash symbol used twice at the front and also within the reference here. So this hash symbol is referring to a bookmark. This hash symbol is referring to the spilled range, and it creates it. So let's test it. So this should take me to the working sheet. Drum roll. Here we go, workings, A1, F5 enter. That still works as well. So there you go. So that's automated. So let's see how this works. So let's say I create a brand new sheet for, let's copy this across. By the way, the easiest way to copy is to drag it, hold the control and release the mouse. And let's say I call this report 4. Okay, let's go back to sheet index 6. Where are we? Report 4. There it is, automatically in there. Now, that's what that now function did. Before, when I added it back like this didn't update. And that's what Bob was able to show me, that if you use that now on the end, that makes it automatic. So it automatically updates. So that is an automated way to create a hyperlink using some dynamic arrays and some range names that are really cool. So let us now look at a technique where we can add a next and a previous. So next and previous. So we want to go back and we want to go forward. based on a single cell that we can copy and paste into other sheets. So basically it just selects the next sheet along. So you can sort of go to the next sheet. Maybe you've got processes that sort of you work from left to right. So this is an easy, it's not an easy technique, but it's a technique to make it easy to create the link. Okay, so let's have a look here. We're going to use two brand new functions again. So these functions, so let's use one equals sheet. Oh, so the sheet function tells you how many, from left to right, how many, what's the number here? So I'm in data 1. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sheets. This is the 6th sheet in the file, and it's a sequential number from left to right basically, and it's the sheet function. There is also a sheets function, and that tells us how many different sheets there are in the file. So at the moment there's 18 different sheets in the file, and again that's counting them from left to right. It includes hidden sheets. We'll talk about hidden sheets at the end, but let's see how we can use this. So our sheets only listing has, oh, and by the way, you can get a number from another sheet by using sheet and then referring to it. So the welcome, if I refer to a cell here, so the welcome sheet is the first sheet. So it's going to be sheet 1. So if you refer to a cell in another sheet, it gives you that sheet's number as well. Okay, so we're going to use that to our advantage. Okay, so let's see how we do this. We're going to create two names. One's going to be called next and one's going to be called previous. So the formulas are about halfway down page 13 of the notes. So new name. First one's going to be called next. And here's the formula, equals index. So we're using the index function. The index function extracts out of a range. Now the range we're going to use is that sheet only listing. Spell it right. Sheet only listing, comma. Now we're going to use the min function because we don't want to actually, what we're going to do is we're going to be selecting, we're going to be taking the sheet. So here we go, sheet, open bracket. Now here's the secret to this little technique. It's the exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. I'm going to use $A, $1. Now the exclamation mark is the sheet identifier. If you use it by itself, it means the current sheet. So whatever sheet this formula is used on. So let's see, close the bracket on that. So I'll explain that a bit more in a minute. Okay, now I'm going to add 1 to this. But if I happen to be on the last sheet and I add 1 to it, I would get an error. So I'm going to use the sheets, open bracket, close bracket, with the min function. So that's always going to, I can't get higher than 18, which currently that's how many sheets there are. So that's why I use the min function. So I'm avoiding getting to 19, because if I'm on the last sheet and I add 1 to it, I'll end up with 19, which will generate an error, which is not what I want. So how many brackets? I got another 1, 2 brackets on the end. Okay, drum roll, will this work? So this is the next. That looks good. Okay, let's create the previous one. So name manager, new, there's a few different ways to do this to get to a new name. Previous equals index. So this is pretty much the same formula, but we're going to be going the other way. So sheet only listing, comma. This time we use the max function because I don't want to go to 0. So this time we're going to take the sheet, open bracket again, the exclamation mark, $A, $1. I always recommend using the fixed version, because when you use this exclamation mark, it can return a relative reference, and there is the possibility that it may be give a ref error. So always use the dollar signs on that. -1, because we're going to the left. This is the previous one. And -1, that's a lot easier, because 1 is the very first, so I can just type that in. So bracket, bracket on the end. So basically the max makes sure we never get to 0. Here we go. So we've got a next and we've got a previous. So let's see how we can use those. So I'm going to create a hyperlink using those references. So I think I am. Hang on, just bear with me. We've got that. Okay, yep. So here we go. Here's the back one. So equals hyperlink. And we're going to use that, the good old hash symbol at the front, and join that to the word previous, which is a range name, which I could have entered there. There we go. And we're going to go to, let's say we want to go to A1 within previous. Oh, do I have to use the, maybe I do. Let's try that. Oh, that's right, because that's going to return the previous is going to refer to the name of the previous sheet. So we've got to sort of build this up. So the previous name is going to return the previous sheet. Okay, so we've got to build this up similar to what we did before with the I'll use A1, and that's it, comma, and I'll call this back. Instead of, previously we've used link, close the bracket. Now let's have a look and see if it works first. So this should take us to the index 6 sheet. So drum roll, and it should take us to A1. Yes, index sheet. Cool. Let's go back, F5, enter. So we can copy this across, and we can just change the previous to next. Oh, ampersand, and change that to next. I could have used the word back as well for the previous. Okay, so this should take us to data 2 A1. And there we go. So those 2 cells will work in any sheet. So you can copy those 2 cells to any sheet and they will go back and next. Let's try in the welcome. So let's copy that and go to the welcome sheet, and we'll paste it here. There we go. So if I try and go back, okay, it takes me to A1. So it actually takes me to the A1 cell. If I go next, that should work. It should take me to index 3, which it does. All good. Let's go try it in the end. Let's go right to the end here, which should be, I think, a workings, I know, lists. Okay, let's try it there. I'll zoom in a bit. Okay, so if there is no next, but it should take me to A1. There it is, and back should take me to tables. So there you go. So they are 2 links that you can create to automate the back and next aspect of it. Now, it doesn't work with hidden sheets. So if you do hide a sheet, so let's go here. Let's say I hide tables. Right, this now is basically stuck here. It won't be able to go. It just clicks, nothing happens, because it wants to take me back to tables, but it can't. And so it can't go any further. So if you are going to have hidden sheets with this technique, unhide. By the way, you can unhide multiple sheets now, so give that a go if you haven't already. You can just select multiple sheets using Control and Shift to do that. Click OK. Yeah, so if you are going to hide your sheets, just put them on either end, and then that doesn't affect the this little technique here. Now, if you may want to create a icon, so let's go to icons, insert icon. To do that though, I'll show you a name. I'm going to go HL back. I'll just do one because we're getting a bit short on time here. So formulas, define name. I'm going to call this HL back. So this is a hyperlink back. And the formula here is the good old indirect. Is another function that separates the Excel community. Some people hate indirect because it's volatile and you can't follow it for a link. So, but it can do some stuff, can do some pretty magical stuff. The formula I'm using is on the bottom of the last page on page 14. So double quotes, single quote, double quote, ampersand, and previous. And again, we're just building that same quotation. So we've got a double quote, single quote, and the exclamation mark, and A1, and close the bracket. The indirect function creates a link to a cell, or creates, it converts text into a link to a cell. Indirect sort of has its own, you could do a whole webinar on indirect, but that's what that's doing. And so by having indirect, you can create this hyperlink can be used. Oh, before we do that, we got to use that same technique. I'm going to copy that because I'm going to need that again. I'm just going to refer to a cell here. So this is a little hack, okay? This is similar to the hack that we did the unbreakable hyperlink with. I'm going to create an icon. Let's look for arrows. Let's use that one to go back. Oh, actually, let's use that one. That looks there. So that's going to be our back arrow, if you like. And so we're going to right click, link, and we're going to use the HL back at the moment. Remember, I just used a normal link to HL back. Now I'm going to do that same technique and convert HL back to, here we go, that indirect that I copied earlier, that I created earlier. So let's tick that and click close. So when I click this arrow, you need to click outside of it. That should take me to validation. Here we go, drum roll. Woohoo, okay, all good. So, and I can copy that and I can put it pretty much in any sheet here. And let's have a look. So here's in validation. If I click it, it should take me to workings, and then workings should take me to dashboard 2, and then dashboard 2 should take me to dashboard 1. Cool. And you could do an arrow the other way as well, and using like HL next or something like that. So just using that same technique. Again, you create it using the normal reference, and then you adjust the hyperlink range name to use the indirect function there. Okay, so there was a whole lot of different techniques in that session. Hopefully some of those you can use for other things as well. But in terms of creating hyperlinks, lots of good techniques. Got the hash symbol is the easy way to create a bookmark, which then the hyperlink uses. The hash symbol also, as we saw in our index 6, that refers to a spilled range, which is dynamic arrays, which you need Office 365 to run. So again, if you do have any questions, feel free to email them, and I might put another video together answering your questions and send that through. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Feel free, I've got an email list if you want to join, whether it's at A4 Accounting or Excel Yourself. You can sign up. If you sign up for courses, then you can join the email list as well. So lots of free courses on excelyourself.com. So feel free to share that resource. Thanks for listening, and again, I hope you found that useful. Thanks very much.
Wow.
Oh, okay. My turn to go.
You can go on then.
Oh, So I've dropped his email for anyone who wants to ask any question. I've also dropped his blog site. You can see excelyourself.com.au and some other cool stuffs. So I'll also drop the feedback form now, so you can drop your feedback on whatever you want us to do in future. If you want us to bring new guests or any suggestion you guys may want. So I think we're good. We're good. I think that's all for today. So for the next, do you have anything to say?
Okay, no, but you've already started what I wanted to also let them know. The session we
Okay.
have for the Power BI.
So for the next session, we'll have another section by 6 p.m., which is on Power BI. I'm coming to just pull up my screen so you can see. Just give me a minute. Okay. So we have another section which is filter and context transition in Power BI by 6 p.m. So I'm sharing my screen now. You can see my screen. So this will be the next section. I have a special guest from India and we'll be taking us on filter and context transition using Power BI. So I think that's all for today. Bye, guys.
Okay, so thank you to everyone, and special mention to Alan. Thanks for joining. Who else? Sandeep, thanks for the comments. Andrew, to everyone who, and Victor Momo. I'm sure he knows everything that was mentioned here today. Maybe I should go ask him for some more tips to add to these ones. So thanks to everyone, and have a very wonderful rest of the day.